Yes, guys, welcome back to another Hurt to Healing Tales of Triumph episode. Today we are following on from Grounding and Emotions, and we're going to be covering strengths and weaknesses. Now, strengths and weaknesses is, I would say, very closely correlated to grounding and emotional work, because I find grounding and emotional work extremely important for your emotional regulation, making sure that you are quite as much as you can be in a state of homeostasis, as well as being able to control your triggers on an everyday activity level. Now, strengths and weaknesses play a massive part of that, because you need to be able to identify what you're good at and what you're bad at, essentially. So actually knowing what you're strong at and what you're weak at is extremely important, so that you can then further develop your strengths and you can develop upon your weaknesses, and then turn those weaknesses into strengths. So developing strengths and weaknesses has always been a massive goal of mine. Obviously, being a personal trainer, being somebody who loves going to the gym and loves bodybuilding and essentially building on their overall wellness, I like finding things that I'm not good at and then trying to make them something that I do like. So like, for a perfect example, I've had lots of bouts of running in my life. Sometimes I'll love it, sometimes I'll hate it, and I sort of ebb and flow with running. And at the moment I really dislike it, but that's probably because I know I'm not doing it very much. Whereas if I get out and start running on a more regular basis, then I probably will enjoy it more. Like, I was in Australia and I was running more consistently, I was running all the time. I really enjoyed it. I did really enjoy it. And I know that the more I get out and the more that I do, the better it's going to be for me. So that's something that, for a prime example. So now when we look at emotional work, so I've had said on many different occasions, I've had lots of problems with anxiety, I've had lots of problems with depression, trauma, loads of different mental health issues in the terms of those realms. And the reason that I've been able to, essentially, I say recover, other healthcare professionals don't like using that word recover, but I like to say that I've recovered because I've been able to identify, again, same as what we've been going over the past couple of weeks, everything correlates, right? So I did my timeline, I found out when everything happened to me, why. I never know why it happened, but I know where it happened, I know how it happened, I have all this information about everything that I've been through to the point that I'm now at. And so therefore, because of what I've been through, there's very obvious things that have caused me to have different strengths and weaknesses on an emotional level. So control. Now, this is a big thing for a lot of people who have been through a lot of different traumatic experiences. Control is one of those things that, because obviously when you're going through a traumatic experience, you're so out of control, you then seek control in your everyday life. So the easiest thing to control is food. This is why, well, there's lots of reasons why children from a young age have big food issues. One of the biggest ones in our society and Western culture is because of high palatable, highly processed, high sugar foods. What happens is that actually, especially from such a young age, that changes the brain's chemicals, and it's basically just a drug addiction. High sugar foods are essentially just a drug addiction. And so if you have ever known anybody who's been a drug addict or alcoholic, how hard it is to get an adult to change their ways, think about how much harder it is to get a child to change their ways. And this is why I'm not a parent, so I can't stand here and say what you should or shouldn't do from a parental perspective. However, I know from research studies that I've looked at that children who live a life in the Western culture, who have highly palatable, highly processed, high sugar foods from an early age, they have more addiction issues throughout their life than somebody who has a childhood full of leafy greens and high protein and things like that. So that being the issue there. But another way it can come out is through trauma. So when traumatic experiences happen to a child, they are completely out of control of what they're able to do. Their fight or flight hormones are going through the roof. Their five senses are being horrifically overstimulated. Their brain doesn't know what to do with all that information. And so therefore, when they are massively out of control in that realm, they then use food to be able to control what goes in and out of their body. Essentially, because during the time of trauma, they might not have been able to control what was going in and out of their body. And it is horrible to think about. Remember, I've been there. That has happened to me. That's why I'm using it as an example. So the actual traumatic experience from that perspective is extremely challenging to then be able to parent, because how do you deal with that? And again, it's recognizing that. So food has always been a big issue for me, especially when I was younger. I always refused to eat lots of different foods. My parents would say, eat this or you go to bed hungry. I would just go to bed hungry. Essentially, if I remember correctly, they would end up caving and give me some different food anyway, but I was extremely stubborn. And then what happened when I was in year 6, I believe, I went away on a school trip. I went like 3 days without eating anything. And I felt like I was going to die. So then I caved and ate some food. And then that's what opened my eyes up to the possibility of food being actually really tasty and really wonderful. And then I changed my ways. That was always a way I used to control things. When I was then older, I then used drugs to control the way that I felt. So if I wanted to calm down, I'd smoke weed. If I wanted to feel more alive, I would take MDMA or I'd take cocaine. Or if I wanted to be more awake, I'd take cocaine, things like that. I use those different things to be able to regulate my feelings and my emotions. So again, identifying that, understanding why I was doing that was a massive thing, and then developing on those strengths and weaknesses. So obviously a weakness of mine has always been addiction. And so understanding that addiction isn't necessarily a problem, but actually can be used as a benefit is also a massive thing to look at. And this is what I strive to tell people with other addictions, is that it's not necessarily a problem. The problem is what you're addicted to. So become addicted to something else. So like my massive addiction at the moment is filming content. I am just going through an absolute craze of like every single day I'm getting behind the camera, I'm filming content, absolutely love it. Right, I'm in the gym all the time, absolutely love it. Right, smashing my training, been brilliant. Something I haven't quite correlated is being like, I was at one point in my life, I was massively addicted to counting calories, which is quite unhealthy sometimes. Not one grain of bread or one grain of calorie of any description would pass my lips if it wasn't calorie counted. And I had a really unhealthy addiction to that. So that's something that I now don't do. I don't restrict myself in that kind of way. Not that I particularly care. I had abs for many, many years. That's not really my thing anymore. I care about being overall very well, very happy, good flexibility, good training. That's all I particularly care about. Being hyper fixated on being shredded isn't my thing. I'm a healthcare professional. I advise all my clients to ensure that they have a healthy all-round life in something that you can maintain for the rest of your life, so that you're healthy for the rest of your life, rather than just going through these cycles of unhealthy. And that's what essentially bodybuilding, powerlifting, I see a lot of these. You want to be at the top of your game, you need to do that. And I understand if you're going to compete in that sort of realm, do it. That's cool. I'm not here to judge. All I'm saying is that generally for people, they aren't going to be a world-class bodybuilder or a world-class powerlifter, and then therefore they don't need to worry about it as much. And I feel like that is what the fitness society is doing, because you see all these people on social media who are taking steroids and are massive and are huge, and they're always talking about calories and different things like that. And it's something that I don't feel like you need to worry about that much. So that is why I don't particularly worry about that aspect of my life too much. I worry about other things. And again, having healthy addictions, because when you are laser focused, and this is something that my mentors told me, this is something that a lot of wealthy people online talk about, is that persistence, and somebody who is persistent and is constantly learning will win against somebody who's naturally gifted at something 10 times easier. So if you're naturally gifted at playing basketball, but then you only play once a week because you're good at it, and somebody else who's not that good at it plays every single day for like 3 or 4 years straight, and then he actually ends up being better than you because he's been consistent, he's trained hard, and he wants it. And so the correlation, it's all about trying and failing. You will never succeed if you do not fail. So that's why I strongly advise, and this is why we do strengths and weaknesses homework, because you need to be able to understand where your weaknesses lie, what your strengths are, so that you can continue to develop your strengths. But what some people do is they like to identify, I'm good at that, so I'll just do that, and I won't do that because I'm not so good at it. But actually, you need to do less of that and more of this, so that you can then be on par with everything. So again, for me, for example, I love my weight training, love it. I love my flexibility, but I'm nowhere near as consistent as I need to be with my flexibility training as I am with my weight training. And I know that's my issue. So now I prioritize my flexibility training. So every single day I wake up and I do a minimum of 15 to 20 minutes of flexibility training, at least. And then at the end of my workout, I ensure I have half an hour to do more flexibility training at the end of my workout. I have to, because if I don't schedule that time in to do it, then I won't do it. And I know that that's an issue. And then I know that I get tight and I get cramps, and I don't like that. And I know that then I'm leaving not necessarily gains on the table, but I'm not as healthy as I physically could be in that sort of realm. It's the same with my food. Again, baby steps is something I've always spoken about. I can't expect to go from really struggling with flexibility and actually finding the time to do it to doing it all the time, as well as worrying about everything else. So I make sure I schedule things in. So I create a task in my day. Spoken about tasks before. You schedule a task in, right, I've got half an hour then to do it. I have to do it at those times. Everything else happens naturally. I've been weight training every single day pretty much for the past, weight training consistently for the past 4 years. 2 of those years I spent in a constant calorie deficit and barely built any muscle because I was an absolute idiot of what I was doing in training. But I've been weight training now for a long time. I do that without even thinking about it. I always time in my day to weight train, always. And so I have to ensure that there's always time in my day to stay flexible. And there is time that I can sit down on the floor for 20 minutes and do some stretching. There's just a lot of times that I just don't do it. And so that's what being more consistent in that realm is. And then there's the final hat trick, physical wise, is being more consistent with my nutrition so that everything can function the best that it physically can. That's the last thing, then that's the last struggle that I've got to overcome, because everything else, again, finds time. I don't have to find time to do it. I've already scheduled time in to do it. So all of my mental health stuff, all of my journaling, all of my meditation, all of that comes naturally either in the morning or at night time or whenever it just needs to happen. Because I found with my mental health, for example, that I can't force things to come out, right? I can only allow things to come out when they need to come out. So with something, if I'm finding my hips are particularly tight or I'm in quite a bit of pain, something needs to come out somewhere. So I then sit down and do 10 minutes of meditation to find what needs to come out. I do some inner work, and then I do whatever I need to do in that physical realm to allow the mental manifestation of that pain to be released of some description, whether it be stretching, whether it be journaling, whether it be running, whether it be, sometimes screaming into a pillow, right? Listening to music, deep meditation, work, which is something we'll cover. There's loads of different things that can happen that need to be done in different realms that I need to do at certain points. But again, because I've done this amount of work, I've been on this journey now for 4 years in terms of I'll be gym for 5 years then. I can't remember. Because it'll be, 2 years to emotional work. And I know now from 2 years of doing this all the time, it's that it takes a long time and that I can't force things to come out when they need to come out. So how do I want you to identify your strengths and weaknesses? Because some people really struggle with their strengths and weaknesses. Some people like admitting that they have weaknesses. We all know we have weaknesses, but how do you find those weaknesses, right? So the best way I found to do it, the best way that's worked for me is going back over the information you've already got and looking at your life of what you want to be. So do you remember a couple of weeks ago, we were speaking about the life you want to live, millionaire, playboy, philanthropist, that sheet, and how you broke that down, your ladder of goals. It's what I called it, the ladder of goals. Your ladder of goals will enable you to see your strengths and weaknesses a little bit easier. So in your ladder of goals, there'll be possibly 100 tasks that 100 steps you've got to complete in order to get to where you want to be. Each individual step will require a strength. And so therefore, if you have not acquired that strength, that is a weakness, right? That's the easiest and the quickest way to find your strengths and weaknesses. Now, if you want more, that might be a very physical. So like millionaire with a philanthropist, you need to learn how to day trade. You need to learn how to get into real estate. You need to blah, 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 quite physical things. In terms of emotional stuff, no, I've never met anybody who is so emotionally secure that they ever need to not have therapy or counseling or their own therapist or counselor in terms of journaling or story writing or drawing, things like that. So that's always really, really good. If you have ever once said to yourself, I can't do this, I'm not good at this, I'm bad at this, I hate myself for that, that is inner critic work. That is a weakness. That is something you need to work on, because you should love yourself. At the end of the day, you're the main character in your own story. And Christ, if you don't love yourself, how can you expect other people to love you? That might be quite a harsh thing to say, but I find that so important, and I say this to I say this to my partner, I say this to all of my friends and family and stuff, like, love yourself the most, because you are the main character in your own story. And if, you love you, how can you expect other people to love you? I find anyway. Other people love you for who you are, yes, of course, but you have to love yourself. So loving is a big thing. Obviously, if you aren't in the gym, that's a big weakness. You need to be in the gym, not only for your physical health, but for your mental health, longevity of life, good strong bones, not causing risk to your friends and family. If you don't eat well, again, that's another really big. So yourself, that you know, a lot of pain, then there's a weakness, and it could just be random pain. I don't care if it's random pain or like, you know, expect, but that's another weakness that you need to get sorted, definitely. So do you see how these different things can correlate? So that's this week's task. Go away, look at your different pains, look at your different strengths and weaknesses, correlate your strengths and weaknesses, and devise a plan on how to get stronger in all of your weaknesses. Focus less on the strengths, focus more on your weaknesses, because as you complete, again, checklist of things, tasks, tick boxes, the more weaknesses you can turn into strengths, the stronger your strengths will become naturally. Yeah. So for example, if you're good at going to the gym and you're bad at your nutrition, right? If you get good at your nutrition, your gym will go through the fucking roof, right? Because you're just that much better at dealing with, you're just better at recovery, you're better with nutrition, you're giving your muscles what they need, you're giving your brain what they need. Yeah, you'll be so much more in the gym once your nutrition gets better. Right? If you speak to yourself poorly and you know you do speak to yourself better, then into relation, but you have a relationship with your partner, but you don't have a good relationship to yourself, then if you get a better relationship with yourself, you'll have a better relationship with your partner. I can promise you that. Because if you're happier and stronger and like emotionally and more confident and less anxiety and less depression, then in turn you're it's going to thrive, because you're putting your fears and anxieties onto your partner anymore. You've dealt with those, and now you and your partner can thrive in your relationship, for example. So there's a multitude of different things you guys can try and you guys can do. So just do what you can, the best you can, when you can. Again, the more information you have, the better. You can look back on this in a few years and think, oh my God, I can't believe I was doing that, or I was this insecure, or I was that anxiety ridden, and those different things. And it's really nice to see how far you've come, because sometimes when you're climbing the mountain, the summit seems so far away, but actually you're so far along that journey already that you're closer than you think you are. So that is it, guys. Please don't forget to comment your thoughts down below. Make sure you share this with somebody who needs it. Don't forget to drop it a like and give me a follow, and I shall see you in the next one.